Hello and welcome to Scilence, a podcast where women get really honest about surviving and thriving in what often feels like a man's world. My guests are wonder women from the fields of science, technology, engineering and mathematics, or STEM, where inclusivity and diversity can be a real problem. I know this only too well as a female Southeast Asian mechanical engineer. I was kind of a minority within a minority. I'm Dr. Shanice O'Mara, an engineer turned broadcaster. Throughout my career, I've worked on and reported on some cutting-edge technology and innovation. And through my TV work, I've met some incredibly inspiring women from a diverse range of STEM fields. Talking to these exceptional ladies has left me feeling empowered, hopeful and excited about life. I believe Scilence will enrich you too. Every week, a woman in STEM shares her unique experiences with absolutely no pressure in having to promote her accomplishments or guard her impressive reputation. Because I've come to realise that everyone is just way more open and relaxed when they're anonymous, so I deliberately disguise my guests' voices so that we're just connecting as human beings rather than human doings. It's my hope that you really relate to what we chat about today. If so, please do subscribe to Scilence and maybe even rate and review the show. I'd love to have your feedback. This week, my guest is in the field of chemical engineering. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, good. It's been a long day, but happy to be talking to you.
Yeah, likewise. I must say that chemical engineering, given what I know of what you do, doesn't really adequately describe your work. What are your actual passions in what you do?
So I think sustainability, or maybe even going beyond that to regeneration, has always been a passion of mine, and so that's what drives me definitely, and that's what drove me to study my degree. It wasn't necessarily for the love of engineering, as much as that might be the case. It was to equip myself with the tools to make a change, to make whatever future the world looks like greener and fairer for everyone. And I think quite often women and also different minorities are cut out of the conversation around building a future of whatever sort it may be.
Totally.
To have ticked the box of being a mixed race, a woman, and then to have that skill set where you can allow yourself to talk the language of people who have been making decisions up until this point, I just felt it was a good way to go.
Yeah. I mean, how do you achieve something like regeneration in chemical engineering? Like, what does that even mean?
I think it can look very different for a lot of different people. I mean, the definition of regeneration is to just leave something in a better condition than you left it. So
Right.
I think historically we've always, and this isn't just true of chemical engineering, I think this is true of most Western industry, we've just been very extractive in how we thought about things. And there's no kind of idea of putting back, may that be in the short term or the long term. So I think it's just looking at everything in a slightly more holistic way, and seeing the full scale of impact. So for chemical engineering, for me, at the moment, that kind of means looking at waste streams as a raw material, so as a starting point for making something new and making something exciting. I don't think that's in 50 years' time. I hope that's still not the way we're thinking about regeneration. I hope we've gone to like the next level, but for now, I see that as like a step towards getting there.
I must say that does give a different spin on the whole label of chemical engineering, because when you think of chemical engineering, you just think of like toxic liquids and gases and things like that, and clean suits. But is that what your day job's like?
No, definitely not. I studied in Edinburgh, so I was very much programmed to think of chemical engineering as the oil and gas industry, obviously being so close to Aberdeen and the North Sea, or the drinks industry. So a big recruiter of our university is Diageo, so your vodkas, your rums, your whiskies. So it was a really limited view of, my view was really limited of what chemical engineering could be. But I purposefully kind of rebuked that upon graduation. I wanted to work for a company that actually had ethics to start with, and then ideally ethics that I agreed with. And I didn't just want to do a graduate team for 3 years to maybe rotate into their sustainability division and hopefully one day, work on something I wanted to do. After 5 years at university and having studied up to that point, I was like, I want to do what I want to do now. Which might be a bit selfish and naive way to think about things, but and that's how I went about. So my day job is definitely not toxic chemicals and clean suits. It's a lot of colour, a lot of open conversation. And there's still an element of changing people's minds. I think people hear the word chemicals and automatically get a bit suspicious. Which is, I think it's grounded in something. The chemicals industry hasn't painted itself in a good light all the time. So it's still, I've got to change minds a bit, but I'm definitely in an environment where people are willing to listen, which is a privilege that I don't think a lot of people have.
So take me back to when you were a little girl. I mean, was it the dream to become a chemical engineer working in the field of sustainability and regeneration?
No, definitely not. I didn't know chemical engineering existed until I opened up the university prospectus. So I was late to discovering the field. I always was interested in kind of the science, the STEM subjects, the more technical. That's always where I saw myself ending up.
Right. So it came naturally to you then?
Definitely. I had an interest in everything. I've been through a million possible career options in my life. I wanted to be a film. I wanted to play film orchestras for a while, and then I wanted to design roller coasters. But I think I've always been slightly more focused on the sciencey side of things. My dad, so my mum and dad are quite different. My mum is much more the arts and languages. And that's kind of what she's taught me. And then my dad is the technical, so he's a computer scientist, IT. So I was lucky to have both in my house, but I always gravitated towards, for a career at least, the science side of things, the STEM subjects.
Right.
And then I think I don't know where it's come from, the kind of passion for sustainability or greenness or whatever you want to call it. Because I remember being very young, in primary school, so I can't have been much older than 8 or 9, and wanting to be an environmental lawyer. So that idea of, caring for the environment, it came from somewhere, but I don't really know where. So I think it's just being raised in a house where everything has a value.
Right.
And looking back to where my dad's family's from in the Caribbean, and you have a different relationship, I think, there's just a different relationship with nature out there to how there is in the UK. So I think that taught me a lot as well.
Yeah, I really relate to that actually, because coming from the countries I come from, I just saw a huge amount of resourcefulness with waste and trash.
Yes,
that we just don't get here in the West.
Definitely not.
I also remember a defining moment of kind of environment week at secondary school, and I just thought, you know what, I really care about the environment, and I was so mindful to never ever litter again and to recycle. But it was one moment. I wonder if that happened to you.
I can't think of one moment. Like I say, it feels like it's been with me for so long. I do vividly remember learning the 3 R's at school: the reduce, reuse, recycle, and you had to make a poster on our kitchen cupboards. And me being militant about people actually adhering to the 3 R's in our household. So I remember that's probably a bit of a turning point. But I think there was something already there. Even before that, but I do remember that quite vividly.
Do you reckon? Do you reckon being a STEM kid is really obvious? Like, as a kid that sort of naturally gravitated towards STEM subjects, was it? Can you describe what a kid like that looks like, or how they behave?
Oh no, definitely not. No. And I think that's one of the big problems with STEM and how it's perceived nowadays. Everyone has that image of probably a boy, a little bit geeky, a little bit nerdy,
probably a bit
who
introverted,
struggles to communicate, in an effective way. I think that's the image that most of us conjure up, even if we don't want to, when that's said. But I don't think that's the case at all. I've recently been speaking to a friend of mine who went to the same school, and she went the opposite route, and she's now a graphic designer, but she was like, I'm finding all these things now where it's the crossover between art and science and maths, and had I known that existed when I was at school, how different the path I would have gone on would have been. And I think it's a massive detriment that we separate it so much, because like I say, I enjoy both sides massively. I studied English literature and language up to English literature and music up until A level.
Oh wow!
So I still play now, and it was hard for me to keep those two parts going until A level, because the system just isn't designed for you to be more than one.
Yeah. So were you a really overstretched kid then, trying to juggle all of that?
Definitely. Like it's things as little as, I mean, I was always in after school activities. I was always busy. I was a bit of a nerd in a good way. Always in after school activities. Just things like the timetables aren't designed for you to want to study English literature and maths at the same time, because they can't imagine that. So I did what did I do? English literature, maths, double maths, and chemistry. So it's things like I used to have to catch up on one of my chemistry lectures I'd miss if I wanted to go to music. So you'd have to, and you shouldn't be having to do that, I don't think, at A levels.
Yeah, there's definitely no encouragement of the polymath.
No, definitely. And like I said, especially engineering, I'm sure this is true of more what's the word I'm looking for, pure sciences as well. There's so much creativity in engineering because it's problem solving at the end of the day. Even though I think people, especially when I was younger, I had the notion that I liked maths and science because there was always a right and a wrong, but that's not the case at all. And there is so much creativity, and there are grey areas, and there are arguments to be had. So I think you miss out on a lot if you don't encourage the creative mind into STEM fields.
I completely agree with you. So was your dad a kind of role model then? I mean, it sounds like your mum heavily influenced you too, but were they people that you kind of followed and that's how you ended up doing what you're doing today? Or were there other influences?
Yeah, my mum and dad are definitely big influences. They've been massive supports with, just doing extra things outside. Allowing me to see as much of the world and as many different things from as many different perspectives as I can. Definitely role models. And they were both the first in their family to go to university. So that's, something you want to continue as much as possible, and live up to, in some ways. I think there are other influences. I mean, I always looked up to. I think I always just gravitated towards looking up to other Black women, even if it was a field that I wasn't necessarily interested in. So I remember looking up massively to Mallory Blackburn, who's an author, but so I knew I didn't want to write books, but
her tenacity.
Exactly. I met her once and she signed my copy of the book Lots of Crosses, and it's just that idea of seeing somebody who was a bit more like me in a space of power and just confident and writing her views and opinions, and everyone being on board with it or listening. So I think she was also in a way an influence on me to just have seen something a bit different in a place of power and success.
Yeah, I mean, I must say that I sometimes get a bit bored with the gender debate because it's really about personality. I mean, I've met men who are so enlightened and so evolved, and I look up to them, as well as women. And so sometimes our role models are just very counterintuitive, but it's more of a essence of someone rather than these clunky labels of gender and race and things like that.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Sometimes when you're talking in certain circles, may they be feminist, may they be in BAME communities, you feel the pressure for your role models to have been these really unique, first Black woman who did this, first person. And sometimes it's just, my head teacher, my chemistry teacher, for example, at school, I think of her as a massive role model. And she's a very middle class white woman. Right. But I think she was brilliant. She totally made me see chemistry as more than just learning formulas or learning what has historically been done. She made me see it in much more a way of learn the foundation and then you make something new. I hadn't really thought of science like that before she taught me.
Wow, you got really lucky there.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. I was lucky with that chemistry teacher.
I always found chemistry such a mystery. It was like another language. I just could not wrap my head around it.
Yeah. Different for everyone.
Yeah.
I am very much like that with sports, for example. I can't get my head around how you'd want to study something like that, but my brother's totally different. That's his jam, so we all have our own thing.
Yeah, totally. So what was it like as a female mixed race in chemistry?
I never saw it as an issue. Not an issue, yeah. I never saw it as an issue or in a way that I was different. As I said, I've been very lucky in my upbringing. I was brought up in a bubble where I could do anything and be anything until probably I left school. I was quite academic, so you can kind of, that allows you certain privileges in a school environment that it might not have done otherwise. So I didn't really question it, or it didn't really come into my mind that I was a woman and mixed race doing this until university, when within like the first few weeks we were in a lecture and we were asked, oh, as women, why did we decide to do this? And what made us make this different choice that isn't really normal? And that was kind of the first time I was the difference was highlighted to me. That, you know, it wasn't what was expected of me. I've never had anything obviously horrible happen. I graduated 2 years ago, and so I spent 5 years in university. But it's all the subtle things, like for example, when I went home in the summers and was working in a coffee shop, and people used to ask, "Oh, where have I been? What have I been doing?" Blah blah blah. And it's that look of surprise on people's faces when you say what you're doing, that for whatever reason they're not expecting. And now at my job, when I go into meetings, this tends to be when you're in meetings with external people, not within my company. And if they don't know who I am, you can see the kind of, they can't, when I come in and shake their hand and say, "Oh, I'm Olivia," and I'm quite young to have the responsibility that I do, you can see the kind of layers of it isn't quite clicking in their head, and they're trying to, you know what I mean? The look of they're trying to amalgamate all the different assumptions they've made in their head and then continue in the conversation. It's things like people don't just, and people talk to me a little bit like I don't know what they assume that I know nothing, starting the conversation, and you have to kind of like drop in bits or ask questions in such a way that lets people know that no, I don't know everything, but I have a wealth of education.
That sounds like a lot of hard work.
So you can't just pull the wool over my eyes. Well, it's not all the time, but it's enough that I've noticed. And you know, there's another layer beyond being just a woman, being mixed race as well. And you know, your journey, it was always obvious. I always knew in myself that I was a woman, if this is the right way to put it. But you kind of just realize later on that you're not white. That was how it works for me anyway. It wasn't like, and it's so my journey with my racial identity and how that has informed my work is quite it's hard to put into words, because I wasn't very comfortable talking. I was always quite independent and feminist, and I could do anything that a boy can do, I don't care. That's always been part of my personality or my way of being. But I've only in the last few years been comfortable talking around my racial identity and exploring that and work it in whatever it may be. So it's I think that has probably informed a little bit of how it comes into my work. Like, I'm much more willing to call someone out on something that's not feminist than something that is comes from a racial undertone. So I'm building that side of my identity. Yes, yeah.
That confidence.
At a slower rate than my, yeah.
If we were to break it down then, like, first of all, how have you felt getting that kind of reception about who you are when you've walked into a room of strangers?
It's not nice. It is definitely not a nice feeling. Because you start out, it's the feeling of starting out on the back foot.
Right.
And for nothing that you've done. Like, I can't control that. I don't want to make it sound like it's horrible and it's not something you can come over. It's definitely not constant. But it's that feeling of having to prove yourself. And I think everyone has that a little bit when they graduate and you're in a new job and you're doing a new thing. That's obviously the way, people feel. But it just feels a little bit more constant, and a little bit more unnecessary and
additional work.
Yeah, it's definitely additional work, and it's what part, and it doesn't really matter. It's their problem, whoever it is. But it's almost like you're thinking to yourself, what part of my identity do they have an issue with, or didn't make sense to them, given the job that I do?
I mean, with those kinds of issues, I must say that sometimes when you vocalize them, people go, "Oh, don't play the victim. Just get on with it."
And you think about that when you're about to say things out loud.
I mean, how do you deal with that?
Question
how
yourself.
do you deal with that? Because, like, literally, you want to speak up, you want to stand your ground, but you don't want to come across as being a whining, moaning victim. So, like, how do you handle it?
I do not have the answer to that question. It's something I'm still working out. There's times within my role at this job that I've actively thought, I'm not going to say anything because I don't want to be labelled as that bolshy whatever girl who always brings things back to,
I'm mixed race and female,
or always brings things back. Yeah, exactly. Or who or be given that flag to carry to make it better.
Put another way, exactly.
That's not my responsibility.
You don't want to have the responsibility of representing that.
Exactly. So there's points where I've kind of, not said things. I think it's I always have there's always somebody I can talk to things about, even if it's not mass action or telling my boss that or telling my professor that or whatever it is. There's always somebody that I can vocalize these things to, which helps massively because you can't just let things fester.
I mean, first of all, how did you identify those people?
So I think my best friend at university, we've just always been on the same level about this. It took time to grow that confidence. And I think a lot of it was a personal development as well. I probably always could have trusted her with those things much sooner in our relationship, but I needed to get to the point where I could talk about it all. So that's part of it. My mum and my dad, to an extent, but it's a funny dynamic. As somebody who is mixed race, you are not the same race as either your mum or your dad.
Right.
On some level.
You're neither that or this.
Yeah, to the outside world anyway. Obviously, I'm my parents' children. But so sometimes that can be a funny dynamic to navigate.
I really relate because I was born in this country and my parents were not. And so I wouldn't say I'm British or English, neither am I Sri Lankan or Malaysian, and it's kind of like I don't quite know what I am.
Yeah, exactly. There's part of it. And it can be hard sometimes because obviously a family dynamic there's so many emotions and so many things at play there. It can be hard sometimes to voice how you feel.
Because sometimes we don't even
and
know.
that just be a statement unto itself. Yeah, and that's nothing. This is just how I feel. It just means that. It doesn't mean anything else. And I think sometimes it can be hard to talk to your parents about that because it's a lot of their choices have informed your life, and it's not a blame game, but anyway. So that can be a fun dynamic to navigate sometimes. But I definitely talk to my parents about it much more now than I did 7 years ago or something like that.
You said something earlier actually that was deeply fascinating, where you said, it took time to talk about this stuff. And I really understood what you meant, because sometimes we don't even know that we are going through some kind of discrimination.
Definitely. I think, it's hard. It's hard to put into words, isn't it? I'm quite a confident person. I was raised, like I say, in this little bubble to an extent where anything is possible and everything is possible. So you don't realize the little things that are happening on the outside. And it kind of took the first overtly racist thing that happened to me when I left university to kind of, start exploring that part of me more than anything else. Or not more than anything else, or more actively, and think about those things. And then so I was on the bus home I worked throughout all of university to help pay for it. And I was on the bus home, and some drunk man just said, "What are you doing on this bus, you N-word? Go back to your country." And it was the most kind of like horrible thing for me anyway, having grown up in my nice little world where I was the same as everyone, to happen. And it was I didn't really register it happening at the time because I wasn't paying attention, and you don't really twig. And then everyone on the bus was kind of like, "Oh, just ignore him, it's fine." And then I kind of got off the bus and had a nice cry on the phone to my mum to be like, "Why did I come here? It's only been 3 weeks, and this has happened." So it kind of took that for me to engage with my racial identity more. And then when I was talking to friends about that, and they'd go, "Oh my god, I didn't even think of you as mixed race, I just assumed you were black." And that's like, good friend, and that's nothing wrong with that, but it's just you start realizing how much people just want to label you, and how there is little consideration for if you agree with that label, and if that identifies with you. So then you start, and then once I could have those conversations with my parents, and you go from there. And then there's a group of people who I work with, who are, you could. It's hard to say how you realize that people are on the same brainwave as you about these things, but what is good about where I work is there is a lot of open conversation, so you can kind of get a feeling of people a lot quicker.
I guess you really, at a gut level, know when someone just accepts you for who you are.
Definitely.
You just know. There's no checklist.
That is a big part of it.
You just have a sense of it, and I think it is really important to gather a strong support network of people that are in your corner, sort of thing.
Definitely.
And I'm so glad that you mentioned it, because I think, there are going to be times when we're taken by surprise because we don't actually realize, or we don't remember that we're different. Because, we were just born here, and, we don't we're not outside looking in, we're inside looking out, and we just feel human. That's how I felt. I've always just felt really human.
And it almost takes somebody else to highlight your difference before you're like, "Oh yeah." And then that creates a whole round of questions for you that you didn't realize were even part of the equation. I always joke with my brother. I remember kind of the first day at primary school when I realized that I wasn't white, and it's weird up until that point for that to just not have even been part of my consciousness. I think I was around 7 or something like that, because you lived in this world where everyone was just people that you played with. And then all of a sudden that stopped. And it created a thing. So
it's kind of a little bit heartbreaking because, you know, mixed race just tend to be so beautiful and interesting, you know, and I just, you know, I find it heartbreaking that, you know, we're not celebrated for our diversity, you know.
Definitely. And I think there's, you know, mixed race is such a vague term and all encompassing. And I think you can argue that race is a social construct, and you know it's all not meaningless. That's a bit harsh, but it's all what we enforce on ourselves. And I think at the end of the day, you know, we're 7 billion people. We're all mixed race on some level. Nobody is one singular entity. So I feel like, yeah, it would just be nicer. This is going to sound very hippy dippy, but it would be just nice if everyone just embraced each other for who they were, and we could move on from having to, you know, label and separate and highlight differences when fundamentally, you know, we're all much of the same.
Yeah, I mean, I wholeheartedly agree with you. Like, I just, you know, if it's hippy dippy, then so be it. I just really feel that everyone should just celebrate each other instead of knocking each other down. And I feel that arguments on race are just massively ignorant. And it drives me crazy. But has it sort of like occasions like on the bus with that drunk man, like have those events kind of stuck with you, or are you able to shake them off?
I don't. Yeah, I think I've remembered it. It's something I'll never forget, and I'll never forget the feeling. But I have to dig it out, if that makes sense. It's not constantly there. It's not constantly playing on my mind. It's something that I won't forget in any rush. But it's not. It wasn't such. It's not so had such an impact that I haven't been able to move on some level. And it's, you know, it has made me part. All of those events make you who you are today. And had that not happened, I probably wouldn't have engaged so much with my racial identity and explored other things that I wouldn't have anyway. I grew up in a very suburban kind of white middle class environment, so you have to seek out a lot of the just information beyond that profile. So learning more and more about my dad's family, and just, you know, Black history or different ethnicities' history beyond what you'll learn at school, and engaging in that whole conversation and movement. You have to do on your own time. And had various incidents not happened, I might not have done that, and I might be where I am today, and engaged with all the various, you know, political intersections that come from being a woman of color, for want of a better turn of phrase. So I wouldn't say it's a good thing. It's not like I wanted it to happen, but I can appreciate how it's informed what I've become today. And like I say, I'm lucky and I have a support network. I could just call my mum and have a cry, and then my dad would call me back and give me all the sensible advice, and my mum would give me the emotional support. So, you know, I am very lucky that I could just talk it out, and it will be okay. But if you didn't have that, it could be a lot worse.
I mean, on one level, it sounds like a very sumptuous personal exploration, which is just great, you know, to like have all this rich history on both sides that you can delve into and is very unique to you. I mean, it's kind of awesome.
Yeah, it is. I like to think of it as a privilege, definitely. Yeah, and yeah, to have the ability to engage with that, I think, is a massive advantage, and probably has made me so interested to an extent in sustainability and keeping what we have going or making it better, is because I've learned about two histories and the journey that had to take place for my mum and dad to be in the same place and meet, and that's something that I don't want to waste or want to continue that world and allow other people to have those experiences. So I definitely think it's informed both kind of my personal life and then my professional life in some way.
Yeah, I mean, listening to you, it kind of highlights the need for just the message to be conveyed from an early age that we should really just celebrate who we are instead of comparing our differences and feeling bad about them. Because I mean, when you get off the bus and you feel like you have to cry it out, it's like, if we had the message instilled in us that that person is clearly ignorant and there's absolutely nothing wrong with you, maybe there would have been a very different reaction. But we are sort of like raised to believe that someone's ignorance is kind of our problem.
Yeah, no, that I would agree with that. That's a good way of putting it. You very rarely, and it's hard because you've got to build up. I think now I would be much more likely to have that opinion. But it's hard, when you're a teenager, there's enough there's enough going on without you having to build that level of armor as well. So I think it's something that comes with time.
For sure.
Generally, but have everyone be able to have access to that as soon as possible. Definitely, that message has got to be given out from as early as possible.
Yeah. So how about the subject of being female then? Like, it sounds like you have a lot of responsibility in your job. How do you carry yourself with your chin up high, knowing that, you're female in a very male-dominated world?
Yeah. So in my immediate team where I work with, we are quite evenly split with men and women. But I don't work directly in a team of engineers, so it's when I go out into the engineering bit, slightly more chemical focused bit, then it is much more male dominated. So I think it's nice in my day to day because it's not so obvious that you're thinking about that. You're just in an office of friends and colleagues that you get on with. I think I know I carry myself with a relative amount of confidence, but not too much. It's that balance between I dress smart and how I want to dress, but not too much this way and not too much that way. And I have confidence, but not too much. And with different people, you behave in different ways. And it's so much of it is just intuition and how you act. And there is definitely a next level of that being a woman. It is always intuition how you behave around different people, regardless of who you are, what you're doing. But there is a different level of that being a woman in a male-dominated field. I'm a good communicator, as is not the stereotype for engineers, and I get on well with people, and I use that to my advantage. So I know I kind of am aware of my own skill set and use that. So I think people can get really intimidated, and this is men and women, if you sound really technical and all of a sudden they don't understand. And it's scary because they feel inferior to you. I personally love that feeling because I feel like, yes, I've got more to learn and why don't I know this? I love that feeling, but generally speaking, people don't like it. So I think I just kind of cater my working way into not making people feel that way. You can
But does that mean you're compromising yourself?
Not enough that it bothers me. I think.
And some people might be asking, what does she mean by compromising? And what I hear you describe is that situation where you are smart, you are capable, you are badass, and you kind of want to turn down the volume on that because you don't want to be rejected by others.
Yeah, I think yes and no. I think in some level, I am totally myself. Nobody's totally themselves at work, but I'm everything I'd want to be at work. But there's certain environments where you you have to change that. And like I say, I would like to believe, and again, this is my first job, I'm fresh, maybe I'll become more jaded in time, but I'd like to believe that's something that everyone has to do on some level.
Yeah. What, tone it down?
Tone it down or change how you are in different environments. You can't be everything always. But I feel like I love it when I can explain something that I've had to read 10 different papers about, search words, mull over at night, throw a tantrum because I can't understand. And I can explain that idea or that concept to somebody who hasn't really engaged with chemistry or engineering, and for them to understand it, that's rewarding for me. And in my immediate circle at work, there's not a lot of people with my same skill set. We're quite a unique team of different skill sets brought together. So that's quite a lot of what I do. And I really like that feeling and being able to do that. And I think having developed that skills has really helped me be a female engineer in certain spaces, because it's almost like, and again, I appreciate what you're saying as well, are you having to turn down who you are, but it's almost like a little bit of a sneak attack. They don't realize that you're coming in with XYZ and then you can do that, and hopefully they'll be like, that will allow their minds to be changed a little bit on what a woman and an engineer can offer, and then the next time when they meet someone, they'll go in with a totally open mind. And maybe I'm doing that preemptively because it's so hard to read all these small signals and understanding, but that's kind of my approach at the moment, and it feels like it's working.
Right. Well, I must say, in listening to you, it doesn't sound like you have to tailor yourself to your audience. It sounds like you've got so much genuine passion for what you do. And it really is profound in you that when you talk about yourself and your job and things like that, you immediately conjure up a sense of trust, in the sense that when I'm listening to you, I genuinely believe I'm listening to someone that is being authentic.
Yeah, I don't really have much mystery or much of a mask to me, so I think that's true as well. But I've just, like I was saying, it's taken me not a long time. I'm still in my 20s, but it's taken me a while to get to the place I am where I'm confident enough to talk about race and feminism and XYZ to people. So now that I'm there, and that's kind of that I'm not gonna go back.
Do you think you're there because you've got to an age where you are just comfortable in your own skin?
Definitely, that's part of it. I think that's part of it. I think also it's a different world. She says like she's 80 years old. It's a different world to how I was when I was 13, 14, but it has changed massively in such a short space of time.
How is the world different?
Well, it might be surface level, but there's a lot more diversity in the general space, the public space, than there was when I was a kid. Like I say, I hung on to Mallory Blackman because she was one of the few different faces it kind of in my orbit, and that's so not the case nowadays. The internet, you can find your support system in your community in the whole world. It doesn't have to be somebody you can walk to their house or you've met in real life. I think that makes a massive difference. But I feel like maybe I could have come to this place sooner, but I think between navigating gender, race, sexuality, XYZ, it takes a while. And I think it's something that comes with age and finding the right people as well. Like we said before, finding the right people to talk to. Had I not met, so kind of like my 3 closest friends I did, maybe I wouldn't have, had that journey in the same way. So there's a lot of different factors, but I can't imagine 14-year-old me being so vocal and so confident.
I mean, you definitely are starting your career at a time when it's never been so great for women and so great for ethnic minorities, I think, in STEM.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever you're navigating through, I feel like today there is more support and more understanding out there. Not to say that it's easy.
Definitely. No, I am very appreciative of the time in which I'm coming into this. There are support systems. People are open to conversation. I think, even if it's not a perfect place, I think people are so much more open to conversation and learnings than they have ever been before, and that's a massive part of it. And I'm never going to be the first Black woman or mixed race woman to do anything, and that's a good thing in my head. There's people have done much more amazing, much more difficult things than I'll ever have to do, and now I can just kind of ride in that wake, and I'm very grateful for that. Yeah, very grateful.
Well, you still have such a long career ahead of you. Who knows where it might take you? But actually, on that note, like, as a woman, we can do many things. We can go down very different paths. You said you spent 5 years at university. That's a massive investment in your career. How does other things like, family, relationships and all of that fit into the equation?
I do not know. So you always have that thought of kind of, well, always, as a woman, I think it's something that crosses your radar at some point, of the decision to have children and how that fits in. And I've always had the thought of, well, I kind of think I want kids, but I don't want to have them young, but obviously you don't want to have them too old, and I don't really want to give up a career. But I don't want for my kids to just be raised by nannies and not be there for them. And I want to be able to have worked to a point where I feel like I'm a success before going away. But you have all these different thoughts around what it means, and I haven't answered that question in any shape or form. I think I'd like to have children, but it's not. I would be fine if I didn't. So I think I'm just seeing how things go. It's one of those things where I probably wouldn't have seen myself here 5 years ago. So I'm quite happy to plan my career in kind of academic or professional progressions, but I don't like planning all the other stuff so much, because so much is unknown. So it's hard to balance.
Yeah. I mean, that's such a great way. It's such a great way of putting it, because, with careers in STEM or not in STEM, it's really quite controllable, in a sense that, if you want to study a certain subject, you study it and you get good grades, and that's completely up to you. And, going for your first job, you apply, like, it's all within reach.
Yeah.
Whereas something like meeting the man of your dreams or the partner of your dreams and having children and things like that is so up to chance. And so I think for women in STEM, and certainly my story, I just went for the stuff that I could determine myself. And the rest I've just left up to the universe to decide. But it kind of felt...
Let what will be shall be.
Yeah, but it's kind of felt a bit irresponsible to not plan. And I don't think the whole egg freezing thing and all of those measures that one can take to invest in our future is really a viable option, because so much of it is emotionally driven.
Definitely. Yeah, I've explored the whole egg freezing thing, and
wow, you're very organized.
Whether I should do it, this is what I'm saying. So you're not explored. I mean, I always thought about it. If that's something I should do, because I looked into it, and you can't freeze your eggs too young, because then you're not, when they run out, so to speak, when they're no longer good for fertilization, you're still the age where you can have children. It's a lot of maths to find out the perfect point. to do it. But I think it's just, I think it's
I've
only
never heard
like,
that on that end of the age spectrum.
yeah, because I was looking at it, I'm 25. So I always had it in my head around my 25th birthday, I'd look into it properly. And at the current state anyway, and again, people can correct me if I'm wrong because this is my own research. They only last between 8 and 10 years. So in 8 years' time, I'd only be 32, which isn't to say that, obviously the younger the better with certain things, but at 32, you can still feasibly have children. Anyway,
Yeah.
that's a whole different conversation.
So you're saying the eggs don't become usable after about 8 years?
With current freezing methods, my research has indicated.
Oh, wow. I did not know that.
Yeah, it's not indefinite. So yeah, I didn't realize until I started looking either. But I think I totally agree with you. I can control what I can control, and I'm getting used to letting go of the other stuff. And I think,
I must say it's fascinating that you have been looking into this at the age of 25.
Because part of me is that planning type A person. So having that information is helpful for me. But then part of me is letting that side go, because I'm a bit of a romantic, and I still think if and when I find the love of my life,
yeah, me too.
Most of my plans are going to change, because I will, you become, priorities change. At the moment, I am, single, having just graduated. I live for myself in a very, very selfish way. And obviously my mum and my dad and my brother, it's not the same as having a partner in life. So I can't even imagine how much your whole way of thinking shifts when you're considering someone else. So I can't plan that. And if and when it happens, we'll see, is kind of how I'm going with it now. But the fact that I've looked into things like freezing eggs and stuff shows that there's a pressure and a thought process happening around that. May it be societal or whatever, where I'm aware of lots of different elements. And it's like comparing, my mum had me relatively old. My mum had me when I was 32 and my brother when she was 36. That's and it's just that element of comparison to other people. So some people compare to their parents, don't they? So in my mind, I'm fine because my mum had me in her 30s. That's a while away yet. So I've still, but some people's parents have had them in their 20s. So that puts a different pressure on you. I'm forever seeing people getting pregnant or having kids on Facebook, and that's a group of people my age, and that puts the fear of God into you, because you're like, my life is in a totally different place to where yours are. But
it's funny because I know a lot of people that have their first kids in their early 40s.
Yeah, so I say, my plan is anything is possible, and what will be shall be. But it's weird because you do, like, somebody asked me, are your kids going back to school the other day at work? And I was like, what the hell? That was too much to be asked. So
that is one label I'm not used to.
Yeah, that's not okay. But it will happen.
Yeah,
It will happen.
I love this.
And I'm hoping to not put pressure on it.
Right. And I love this kind of sort of counterbalanced attitude of yours, where it's like stem, like very sort of like not binary, but that kind of logical, rational side of you. But then this other side where it's like, what will be will be. Like, it's great to have that balance, I think, and it feels like today's women.
I'm actively trying to take away control, but
right.
Yeah, I think.
But it sounds like today's woman needs to have that. I mean, that's the conclusion I'm ultimately coming to with doing this podcast, is that it really is about balance and juggling, and the key to all of it is having a level of self-acceptance and self-love to get through the challenges, really.
Yeah, definitely. I'd add self-awareness to that, because a lot of people like, as we've said, to label you and put you in a box. And if you're not self-aware, you can let that become your label, and it might not be the right one, and it doesn't have to be. But I totally agree. it's juggling and understanding and appreciating, and then finding people who can support that.
So would that be the advice then you would give to any young girls who are thinking about following in your footsteps?
Yeah, I'd say, as cliche as it sounds, anything is possible, and don't let whatever preconceived notions the world or people have of you determine it, and find people, maybe your peers, maybe your mentors, to talk to and help. It's not easy, and it's a different kind of difficult for everybody. And don't be afraid to admit that, but then keep working for what it is you want.
What a beautiful note to end on. Thank you so much for coming on this show and sharing your experiences and wisdom with us.
No, thank you for listening to me ramble for an hour.
It's been a pleasure.
Perfect.
That's it from my STEM guest this week. What an incredible woman. For someone so young, she has mastered so many kind of internal challenges and conflicts that some of us struggle with for a lifetime. I feel so inspired hearing her story of being mixed race and female, but the level of self-belief and self-love that she has seems to have carried her all the way through it. Thank you so much for listening this week. Don't forget to rate and review the show, and catch you next week on Scilence.